Buddhism is an ancient tradition with answers to life's biggest questions today. Why do we suffer? How do we relate to other beings? And how do we make the world a happier and more peaceful place for everyone? Our mission at BDK America is to help people understand Buddhism better. Are you looking to start learning about Buddhism or dig deeper? BDK America offers free books and videos for peoples of all ages and levels. Our most popular book, The Teaching of Buddha, is available to read in English and 46 other languages in physical, PDF, and audiobook formats. Visit our website for our latest publications and order your own free copy today.
Hello, I hope that we find you well and in good spirits. Today, we would like to explore another dimension of the fourth mark of existence, which refers to the state of Buddhist spiritual awakening or enlightenment. This state often refers to the ultimate state that the Buddha experienced under the Bodhi tree at the age of 35, but it can also refer to the lower levels of awakening that any of us can realize today. And as the degree of awakening deepens, we inevitably come to experience more and more of what I call everyday compassion. So in today's show, I would like to encourage all of us to awaken our minds to the everyday compassion that embraces our lives. Let me now elaborate on what I mean by everyday compassion. We can find it, for example, in our daily feelings of awe and gratitude for the life-giving forces that produce, nurture, and sustain our lives, whether we are aware of them or not. They include, for example, the DNA molecules, the sunshine, the rain, and the oxygen in the air that we breathe. Then there are the innumerable plants and animals we have partaken and will continue to consume to sustain our bodies. Everyday compassion also includes the inspirations that we derive from listening to a truly beautiful piece of music, or seeing an impressive artistic work, or being part of an unforgettable athletic performance. For me, I continue to be moved by many of the Beatles songs, and I shall always remember the 1981 football championship and the miracle touchdown pass thrown by San Francisco 49er quarterback Joe Montana to beat the Dallas Cowboys. The deep bonds that we have with our families and true friends are painfully precious. For many of us with small children, the angelic look on their faces when they are sleeping never fails to make us smile. Our smiles show the joy, pride, and gratitude we feel because they make up part of the everyday compassion that we experience in our lives. For me personally, I also find compassion in the beauty and greatness of nature. Nowhere is this fulfilling sense of everyday compassion felt more intensely than during my 3-mile walks to or from work. The beauty of the blooming garden flowers of all shapes and colors truly enlivens my spirit. These flowers cheer me on, even during times of personal disappointment. They are joined by the chirping of the birds, whose exquisite song I enjoy and relish as much as I can. Once, a baby squirrel came out onto the sidewalk, lured by the rattling of my keys, and even perched on my shoes, looking for food or perhaps its mother. And most of all, the trees are the constant source of my inspiration. The majesty of their silence is combined with their leaves that reach out by providing a source of life, the very air that we breathe. When the cool, soothing breeze makes the leaves dance, flutter, and shimmer in their shades of green, I experience a sense of inexpressible oneness. Unfortunately, my experiences of everyday compassion are far from being as complete or as frequent as I wish. However, they provide me with a glimpse into what a fully awakened person would experience far more deeply and frequently, as expressed in today's opening passage. And just like a soft breeze and a few blossoms on a branch that tell the coming of spring, so when a person attains awakening, grass, trees, mountains, rivers, and all other things begin to throb with new life. I really like the expression throb with new life. I think it's true that when a person's awakening deepens, his or her life becomes more imbued with everyday compassion in its various manifestations. To use an analogy, the initial stage of awakening is like turning on the radio switch, and the everyday compassion is like the radio waves. Unless we turn on the switch, we can't encounter the existence of the radio waves. And yet, turning on the switch alone will not be enough. So we need to turn up the volume. The more we turn it up, the more we can hear. Just as the more our awakening deepens, the more we become aware of the everyday compassion in our lives. As our awareness of everyday compassion deepens, our recognition of our shortcomings also deepens. In other words, the greater the compassion, the greater the shortcomings. These two seem contradictory, but they actually make up a set, like a sunlight and shade. Imagine sunlight upon a tree. Shade will inevitably fall upon the tree. Thus, this light represents the everyday compassion, and the shade represents the shortcomings that we come to realize. As our awareness of everyday compassion deepens, we feel a profound gratitude to other people, creatures, and things that sustain us. And we regret that we have not realized such things earlier and in a more intense way. Quite simply, our shortcomings become much more easy to see. This is especially true about non-human creatures that are sacrificed on our behalf. One poignant example comes to us from a modern Japanese woman poet by the name of Misuzu Kaneko, who was strongly influenced by Buddhism. This particular poem is entitled A Great Catch, in which she describes the boats returning to the fishing village with huge catches. People rush to the harbor to welcome back with boats with joy and excitement, but Ms. Kaneko is aware of their shortcomings. Let's hear what she has to say. At dawn, with a sky filled with bright sunrise colors, it's a large catch, truly a large catch of giant sardines. The harbor is like a festival, but in the ocean, I wonder how many sardine funerals are taking place. She is painfully aware of the lost lives of the fish. Kaneko sees the fish as she would a human family. Here, it's important to note that she sees herself equally at fault. Although as a member of the fishing village, she too is pleased to some degree with a huge catch. She also finds herself in a dilemma. But what makes her different from others is her awareness of our shortcomings. In other words, the human need to rely on other lives and our failure to fully acknowledge that fact. Let me conclude today's topic on somewhat of a lighter note. This sense of shortcoming is one of a different order from the sense of guilt that can be imposed from above by religious hierarchy. Instead, it's an integral part of one's personal awakening. In most cases, it is tinged with an ability to laugh at one's own limitations. The people that I have known as being awakened are not paragons of perfection. In fact, they are quite ordinary in many ways and are able to accept and laugh at their own imperfections. For example, their quirks or unusual habits. Once in a Sunday discussion group at the temple, some members and I shared our own quirks. One person talked about her quirky habit about cookies and milk. She has to make sure that when she is done eating the cookie, the milk that she is drinking is finished at the same time. It bugs her to no end if there is any milk still left when she is done with her cookie, or vice versa. So she carefully measures how much milk she drinks and how much of the cookies she eats. Another person's quirk had to do with filling up the gas in his car. In his case, he is compelled to make sure the meter ends up with an even number, so it bothers him if the meter ends at $19.59. If this happens, he will try to pump in more gas so he can get to an even amount. By now, you might be saying to yourself, people are certainly weird and quirky, but I'm definitely not that way. Well, let's not jump to conclusions. Even I have found myself to be wrong. I was once telling my wife that a friend of ours had a quirky habit of having to keep making mounds of his fried rice with a spoon as he ate. As he took a bite or two of the fried rice, he would make the mound again. I was chuckling as I talked about this quirky habit to my wife. She smiled and said, "You do that too." At first, I objected, saying, "That's not true. I don't do that." Then, as I thought about it more, I had to admit that I probably did that as well. So it is difficult to see yourself objectively, especially at your own shortcomings and quirks. However, we must remember that we are able to admit to our shortcomings precisely because we are aware of our everyday compassion. Again, there is shade because there is sunlight. So the two go together to make up a vital element of an awakened person. As I close today, I hope what I have talked about encourages you to open up your mind to our shortcomings and to the everyday compassion that embraces our lives. Join us for our next show when one of the foremost experts on the study of Zen Buddhism in Asia and North America will join us.
We at Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai pursue peace and happiness for people around the world. We have published the Buddhist teachings into 41 languages and donated our publications to hotels and other facilities in 55 countries. We would like to share the Buddhist teachings with people around the world. That's our mission. Visit our website for more information